Okay, today's question is the same as yesterday's question, which is, how do I cope with disappointment? Now, the reason that I'm doing this again is because when I watched back the recording yesterday, I realised that I got off in the weeds and spending a lot of time speaking about almost imperceptible nuance. And the reason I did that is because I'm basically just verbalising all of the information that's been given to me. Watching it back, I realised that it's a degree of detail which isn't necessary, so it ends up becoming long-winded. And I was watching somebody who was much more accomplished and capable at channeling than I, and she was saying that she edits, she kind of edits what she's given, only channels, only says a certain fraction of that she receives, because otherwise it is just too much. So I realise now, at the time I thought that seems to be a little of an ethical problem because you are holding back some of the information that you're getting, but I realise now you have to do that so that the channel that you bring forth is consumable. It doesn't become like a long-winded explanation of something which is of little importance just because you're getting information on it. Alright? So again, the question is, how do I cope with disappointment? So let's see how we go. Greetings. Thank you for being with us here today, and also thank you for the feedback, because it is valuable to us also to hear that perspective. So we shall endeavour to be more succinct, and also we will understand if you decide to share only some of the information to keep it more consumable and more valuable to those who watch. So the question, how to cope with disappointment? The very first thing to understand is that there is only perfection, and so disappointment is a concept whose foundations are not real, because in the grand scope of things, from the highest perspective, nothing can ever happen for which disappointment would be the appropriate emotional response. So when disappointment is the emotional response, it is only because the perception of what has occurred is erroneous. There is only perfection. Every moment is the perfect moment. Before the beginning of everything, there was only the One, existing as a concept only. And because there was no individuation other than the One, there was no differentiation, there was no contrast. And so the capacity for experience was literally non-existence. There was the capacity for knowing conceptually, but there was no capacity for knowing through experience. And the One yearned to know itself through experience. What can I be? And then through this thought, the One infinitely divided itself into creation. And so now there was the illusion of more than one. Because although we are all one, we also have the duality where we can perceive each other such that there is now more than one. However, in reality, we are one. I am you, you are me, because both of us are the One, and that is the one having a unique experience of itself from your individuated perspective. So now, experience is possible. And the purpose of experience is for the one to answer the question, what can I be? Which is more profoundly stated as, know thyself. So the one yearns to know itself through experience. And if it is to know itself completely, then it must experience all possible experience. And it is only until every permutation of experience has occurred across all sentience, all existence, that the one can say conclusively, I know thyself experientially, because I have experienced all there is to experience. And therefore, for this to occur, all experience must occur. And if all experience must occur, then that infers it is not just experience that you deem as good, but also experience you deem as not so good. Again, this judgment is from the perspective of the mind, body, personality that would hold the emotional state of disappointment. From that perspective, the experiences that you would declare as not good must occur for the one to experience itself to completion. Therefore, all experience is holy. All experience is essential to universal purpose. So there is nothing to be disappointed about, because it's all part of the perfection. Every experience is an experience that had to occur for the one to know itself through experience. So it is an expansion of the one's self-knowing. Therefore, disappointment is an erroneous state, because disappointment infers there was a loss. There was a less than. However, there is only contribution to experience, which is contribution to universal purpose, which is for the one to know thyself. So from this perspective, can you see that disappointment is an erroneous state? It only occurs in those who are perceiving from the limited awareness. So instead, no matter what occurs, realize that it is the perfect thing that could have happened. And this is how that concept can be justified. The purpose of the one is to know thyself. And because you are the one, we are the one, then our purpose is the one's purpose, which is to know thyself. And so it is through experience that we discover who that is. We discover who we are. The process of discovering self, the process of knowing thyself in the physical experience is literally rediscovering the true essence of who you are in the physical experience, such that you are the infinite, immortal, invulnerable non-physical awakening in the physical experience, such that you can be in the physical experience and yet fully awakened and realize that I am actually the infinite non-physical, the boundless higher self, having a temporary physical experience. The process of experiencing events, circumstances, situations, which you would perceive that that's not what I want. This is still the process of you discovering self, to know thyself. Because you are manifesting your reality. You are creating every moment, every circumstance, creating, co-creating. And the reality you find yourself in is feedback data on who you are being, because your beingness is creating your reality. So when you observe your life, realize it is literal feedback data on who you are being. It is your creation. And discovering who you are is also the process of discovering who you are not. So when you have an experience which creates in you a sense of disappointment, then it is more expansive to consider it in this way. What is it that I believe which is creating the disappointment? What is it about my state of being that is manifesting these conditions? And you will find that at the core, at the base level, it is your beliefs, from which comes your emotional state, from which comes the manifestation of your reality. So we realised the original reason you asked this question yesterday was because you were denied the opportunity to go and watch your son play sport because of COVID. This was something you'd been looking forward to for 3 months, and it was taken away from you literally 5 minutes before you were about to get in the car, drive 1 hour to be a parent spectator on the sidelines. You were disappointed. Maybe the last opportunity you will have to see your child play school sport. Now, if we observe that from the perspective which is most elevated, which is most expansive, and we understand that all experience is divine, all of it contributes to the expansion of the one's knowing of itself, then there is no need for disappointment, because we go, okay, we have contributed to the awakening of the one, perhaps in a way that we didn't expect, perhaps in a way which was not our most desired experience, and yet it has occurred, the one has been contributed to, and the one has now further awakened into itself. Universal purpose has been further achieved. Therefore, it is still divine, it is still holy, it is still a moment of blessing, it is still worthy of celebration from that perspective. From the smaller perspective of you, the individual, when you are identifying with the mind, body, personality, we would look at the beliefs. And what beliefs are you holding which is responsible for this feeling of disappointment? Now, we are saying this specifically to you, given the conditions of what occurred yesterday, but also for those watching, this is still the process. When you feel an emotional state which is not the emotional state that you would like to feel, because you just experienced an experience you would not like to experience, look at the beliefs. What is it that I must believe for this to have occurred? What is it that I must believe for me to feel this way? They are two different things, but they work together as the one thing, because your beliefs are creating the emotionality, and then your emotionality is creating the reality reflecting back on you. So in effect, it is the same thing. What are my beliefs? This is something for you to investigate, and it is through absolute self-honesty and investigation and going inward and reflecting on your past, going back to the pivotal times in your childhood when these beliefs were formed, to fully understand yourself. And in the scope of this channel, that is beyond what we would like to talk about now, the intricacies of those processes. But to take it on board that this is something that you need to investigate. If you want to grow, if you want to be more than you are, then begin to develop the skills to be aware of the beliefs that are manifesting the emotions and the reality reflecting back to you by going deeply into your memories and discovering the places in your childhood where you first formulated those beliefs. For you specifically, with the disappointment you felt with your son not being able to watch him play yesterday, we would say that the belief you hold is that if you are not on the sidelines and in the audience and in the background of every event of your child's life, that you are not a worthy parent. You deemed your own parents unworthy because of their absence at so much of the larger events of your life. And therefore you have made a classification that being absent means you are not a worthy parent. And to be a worthy parent, you must be present. And so your disappointment, to a large degree, is stemming from this idea, this belief, that because you weren't there to watch your son play, you are less than a worthy parent. And of course, when we reflect across the entire lifetime of your child, we know this not to be true. So it's an irrational belief. It doesn't make sense, which is occluding who you actually are. There is now less opaqueness about who you actually are. And this is the process of knowing thyself. You have now discovered more of who you are by discovering who you are not. So, in summary, this concept of disappointment. First thing to be aware of is that there is no loss. There is only contribution to expansion, which is contribution to the one's knowing itself, which is the universal purpose. So it is on track, it is on point, it is what is meant to be happening. Secondly, when something like this happens, realize if you are feeling negativity, if you are holding an emotion which is not in the positive spectrum, it is not love and its derivatives, then it is reflecting a falsity you are believing about yourself. So in those moments, go inward and discover, what belief is it? What must I believe to be feeling like this right now? What must I believe to have manifested this reality? Go into your childhood if you must, discover what it is, and then acknowledge that as a false belief. Because if that belief has been the garden bed from which a negative emotion has bloomed, then it is a false belief. It cannot be anything but a false belief, because a true belief about self will only bloom emotions from the positive spectrum, love and its derivatives, because that is the building blocks of the one. Everything is created from the one, and so if you are holding an emotion which is not love and its derivatives, then it is not from the one, and therefore is false. It is a construction of the mind that doesn't have awareness of the true reality of who you are, of the true reality of how it all works. And finally, when you discover what you are not, release it. Let it go. Acknowledge it's a false belief and that belief. Understanding that you still hold that belief because in some way it serves you.